Viola Desmond, the woman who sat still and moved a nation. Imagine this, a small-town movie theater in New Glasgow, Nova Scotia, in the year 1946. The ticket line is buzzing with chatter, the air is thick with the smell of buttered popcorn, and a young black Canadian businesswoman named Viola Desmond steps inside, holding a ticket she paid for with her own hard-earned money. She's dressed neatly, carrying herself with quiet dignity, the kind that comes from years of carving out success in a world that constantly tries to tell you your place. She sits down in the main floor section, expecting nothing more than to enjoy a film, but the usher leans in, his voice sharp, his eyes cold. "Your ticket is for the balcony, you don't belong here." And right there, in that moment, Viola had a choice. She could move quietly, shuffle up the stairs to the balcony where black patrons were expected to sit, where the view was worse, where the seats were cheaper. She could avoid confrontation, avoid the risk of trouble, but something inside her said no. She stayed seated, and with that single act of stillness, she shook the foundations of a country's conscience. The manager was called, the police summoned. Viola was dragged out of her seat, her arms bruised as they pulled her from the theater, her dignity tested as strangers looked on. She was arrested, jailed overnight, fined not for breaking a written law, but for breaking an unspoken system designed to keep her small. She had simply asked for what she paid for, a main floor seat, but the truth is, she demanded much more. She demanded recognition, she demanded equality. She demanded that the invisible walls built by prejudice come crashing down. Now here's where most people's story would end, in humiliation, in silence, in a lesson learned the hard way. Don't make trouble, stay in your place. But Viola wasn't built like that. She was born in 1914 in Halifax, one of 10 children, and from the start she carried a quiet resilience. Her parents, James and Gwendolyn Davis, raised their family in a world where opportunity for black Canadians was scarce. But Viola refused to let that define her. She dreamed of running her own business, of standing tall in a society that constantly told her she wasn't tall enough. She trained as a beautician, studied hard, and when doors closed in her face, she built her own doors. She opened Desmond's School of Beauty Culture, teaching other black women not just how to style hair, but how to build independence, how to walk with confidence, how to create income in a world that denied them fairness. She gave women a chance at dignity, a chance at strength, and that was her quiet revolution even before the theater incident. But back to that night in 1946, after her arrest, Viola didn't fade into the shadows. She fought back, she hired lawyers, she challenged the fine, she appealed, and although the courts ultimately dismissed her case, the fire had been lit, newspapers covered the injustice, conversation spread, and for the first time many Canadians saw clearly the quiet segregation that had been there all along. Viola had forced a nation to look at itself in the mirror, and what it saw was uncomfortable, undeniable, and unforgettable. Her financial life? She was no millionaire, she wasn't Carnegie, she wasn't Rockefeller, she wasn't some tycoon. She was a small business owner, teaching women in her beauty school, building something modest yet impactful. Her wealth wasn't measured in dollars, though today we'd say her business was successful. Her true wealth was in the women she empowered, the students she trained, the dignity she inspired, and her ultimate legacy was priceless. Her face now rests on Canada's $10 bill, not because she built an empire, but because she built courage into the national story. But let's pause here and think about her attributes, because this is where the lesson becomes personal. Viola had courage, not the loud kind that storms battlefields, but the quiet kind that sits down when the world demands you stand up and leave. She had vision, to see beyond her own comfort, to understand that her struggle was bigger than a movie seat, that it was about every black Canadian told they didn't belong. She had resilience, to take humiliation, jail, rejection from the courts, and still walk forward with her head high. And she had leadership, the kind that doesn't beg followers, but naturally inspires them because her actions spoke louder than words. And now, here's where you, the listener, must face yourself, because maybe you're not sitting in a segregated theater, but you are sitting somewhere in life where someone told you this is your place. Maybe in your career, you've been told you're not qualified enough, not experienced enough, not connected enough, so you stay in the balcony, watching others live the life you wanted. Maybe in relationships, you've accepted less than respect because someone convinced you that's all you deserve. Maybe in your dreams, you've taken the cheap seat, the one with the bad view, because you were too afraid to sit where you truly belong. Viola's story whispers across time. What balcony are you sitting in that you don't belong to? What main floor seat is waiting for you, if only you'll have the courage to stay when the usher demands you leave? Here's the application. You don't need millions to make a stand. You don't need fame to leave a legacy. You need conviction, the guts to risk discomfort for dignity, the strength to demand your rightful place in your own story. Stop waiting for permission. Stop apologizing for taking up space. The world may not drag you to jail for it, but it will try to shame you, to push you into the balcony of your own potential. Your job, like Viola's, is to say no. Think of the ripple effect. Viola had no way of knowing that decades later, children would learn her name in classrooms, that her face would appear on Canadian currency, that her act of defiance would be compared to Rosa Parks. She had no idea that her one choice would inspire thousands. Yet it did. And your choice might do the same. Maybe it won't make headlines, maybe it won't be printed on money, but it could change your family, your community, your generation. Courage doesn't always roar. Sometimes it sits quietly, bruised but unbroken, holding its ground in a theater chair. So if Viola Desmond could risk her business, her reputation, her safety for the dignity of sitting in her rightful place, what excuse do you have for not standing, or sitting, firm for your dreams? Because history doesn't remember the ones who quietly complied. It remembers the ones who refused to move. And if this story lit a fire in you, if it reminded you that your rightful seat is waiting, then subscribe and join me here, because this is where untold stories of courage, resilience, and self-development live, and maybe your next step will write the next story worth telling.